In Return of the Jedi, from a certain point of view, we see Jabba's palace from Bib Fortuna's perspective. With Leia already chained to Jabba, Bib works to finish gathering supplies for Jabba's upcoming execution party. But, during these preparations, Bib quietly considers a way to kill Jabba himself. Today, we'll look at what sparked this sudden opportunity, the plan Bib begins forming, and why it never had the chance to unfold. To understand why Bib even considered turning on Jabba, we need to look at his place within the palace. Despite serving as Jabba's major domo, Bib was constantly belittled, ignored, and treated as little more than a servant. And as he prepared the final supplies for the execution party, all of those frustrations came back to the surface. On the day of the rebels' executions, Bib was preparing supplies in the palace larder when he was interrupted by a delivery droid. He abruptly showed it where to place the delivery, and the droid dropped the pallet before trundling off. Bib Fortuna despised dealing with droids. On his list of 762 things he hated, maintaining droids was in the top 100. The sooner that delivery droid was gone, the better. In fact, Bib briefly thought of shooting the droid, but dismissed it. It was a one-shot weapon and intended for somebody else. Of the 762 items on Bib's list, the one towering above all others sat on a throne surrounded by sycophants and servants, Jabba the Hutt, and Bib planned to kill him today. Further down the hate list, somewhere in the 600s if Bib's memory was right, were maintenance requests. Endless mounds of sand-covered maintenance requests for every little thing tucked away in Jabba's palace. Droids needed oil baths, coolant tanks needed refrigerant, door control panels had to be replaced because the gung-ho Gamorreans didn't understand that not everything needed to be smashed. Despite being Jabba's major domo, Bib constantly received, delegated, tracked down, investigated, and closed maintenance requests. Like right now, for instance. With an execution on the schedule, he should have been in the cells with the prisoners and a few of his favourite tools he called conversation starters, extracting every bit of valuable information from the soon-to-be Sarlacc appetizers. Not that he had anything specific in mind, but information was information. He especially wanted to coax a few whimpers out of the pasty sand wizard who had embarrassed him the day before. Instead, he was stuck in the hangar bay going over sand skiff repair reports. One of Jabba's 2 skiffs needed constant tinkering, and Bib was tempted to blow the thing up. And Jabba, manhandling Bib in front of everyone. Today was the day. He had the blaster. He could manufacture an incident. Bib was interrupted by a Gamorrean with a question. There was an excess of guards on the desert skiffs, which worked in Bib's favour. An excess there meant less guards on Jabba's sail barge, meaning less bodies between his blaster and his boss. Aboard the Katana, Bib vented to Max Rebo about his situation, complaining that Jabba would never let him leave his side. Bib simply knew too much. When Rebo left him to his thoughts, Bib began fantasizing about life on the throne. He could commission Max's band to play for him, maybe a ballad that would be sung in the cantinas across the galaxy. An epic about Bib's rise from the horrors on Ryloth to becoming the most feared crime lord in history. How the reign of the Jabba came to a bloody but poetic end when Bib Fortuna killed Jabba and claimed his throne. All he had to do was hurl Jabba's carcass into the Sarlacc pit, blame a few servants who surely hated Jabba as much as he did, and then usher in the glorious age of Fortuna. Bib was snapped out of his daydream by a panicked servant motioning urgently for him to follow. Guns were firing, people were screaming as Bib tore up the stairs to the main deck. He reached the lounge and froze in disbelief. Sheer pandemonium. The pasty sand wizard was out on the prisoner skiff flipping and twirling like a ballerina. And where did he get a laser sword? The Sarlacc pit was being fed a steady flow of bodies as the pasty wizard sent guards to their doom. And then there was Solo alongside his Wookiee companion, swinging his fists half blind like someone's grandfather after a 2-day grog bender. Although, to Bib's immense delight, a vicious backhand did send that sputtering glory hound Boba Fett shrieking into the gullet of the Sarlacc. Good riddance, the suck-up. The ship was in chaos. Bib was about to shout at the guards for leaving their master unprotected to join in the fighting, when a realization hit him. Jabba had no one to guard him now. Now was his chance. He could kill the Hutt in the chaos, blame the prisoners, and seize the throne. Reaching Jabba, Bib's jaw dropped. The master he served with all the reluctance of a Rancor dentist was being strangled on his throne. Leia Organa, whose early attempts at freeing Han Solo landed her in Jabba's chains, now heaved at those same chains she'd somehow managed to wrap around the Hutt's neck. Bib watched as Jabba flailed, the Hutt's tongue turning purple before he keeled over, dead. Bib backed into the shadows. This was spiraling out of control. If Leia saw him, he was next. Would she stake her claim for Jabba's throne? Would Solo join her? He racked his brain, trying to figure out if he'd ever insulted her. Maybe he could compliment Leia on her choice of assassination. He'd planned on the one-shot blaster, but strangulation was much more effective, and probably better for the environment. Bib was just about to approach her when the Jedi poked his ridiculous face out. He sank deeper into the shadows before following them at a distance. The scene on the Katana's deck was straight out of a Holo adventure. Guards and mercenaries lay motionless everywhere, while the few survivors huddled in a group, edging towards something out of Bib's sight. Peeking his head out a little further, he saw what the guards were staring at. The tantruming sand wizard fired the barge's own cannons at the hull of the ship, before he and the crime lord assassin swung to the prison skiff. Bib had time for a single scream before the explosion picked him up and tossed him into the desert. He woke to a Gamorrean performing some disgusting form of resuscitation. 3 faces stared down at him, a Gamorrean, Max Rebo, and Droopy McCool. Asking where everyone was, the Gamorrean informed him they were the only survivors. He looked around at the desert littered with bits of the katana. He had to hand it to that Jedi. Maybe there was something to his grandiose antics. Hopefully he never saw him again, or Solo, or Leia, the deadliest assassin he had ever seen. But Jabba was dead. Laughter spilled out of him as he doubled over in painful amusement. He already knew who would inherit the Empire. Promising Max and Droopy more concert contracts than they could ever perform, Bib turned to the Gamorrean. It was time to go home. They had an empire to rule. Thank you so much for watching. This is just one of a lot of really cool stories in the From a Certain Point of View novels. If you enjoyed this one, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.